started. If you can all just keep your mics muted during the session. I am going to record the session, by the way, so it will be made available at some stage. I'm not sure when it will be available, but it will be recorded. I think it's actually being recorded already. Okay, so I mean, I'm going to do the session's going to be a little bit different to some of the other sessions because a lot of people sent a lot of questions in, which I am going to try and do a Q&A at the end. We're going to try and answer as many questions as possible. And if there are any questions that you've got, you can just pop them into the chat, and I'll also respond to those after the presentation as well. So obviously, most of you are doing Comrades. Maybe some of you are planning on doing Comrades and trying to get some further information. And when it comes to a fueling strategy, I think especially an event like an ultra, like Comrades, it is absolutely important to try and get it right on the day, because if you don't nail your nutrition, you can really have a miserable day out, and that's not something that we want. I always say to athletes, you can train as hard as you want to for any race, but if you don't implement and practice a proper fueling strategy, you've only sabotaged your own performance. Nutrition is a real game changer. So a lot of people, they're training quite a bit for Comrades. They put in the volume, they put in all the effort, but they forget about the nutrition. And then when you go and run this 90K ultra, all of a sudden you have a really miserable day out. And nutrition can play a very vital role. And when we're speaking about nutrition, we're obviously talking about not just from an energy perspective, but also from a hydration perspective. And that is quite key. Okay. I put up this slide here. I thought it would be quite nice to put this up because I do deal with a lot of athletes. I just want to see. Okay, so I'll just see one of the questions and then I'll answer that later. What kind of an athlete are you? You've got to ask yourself honestly. You're prepared, you've trialed and tested your nutrition for months, and you're ready for the big day. You're underprepared. You woke up just before long last run to realize you need to try and test your race nutrition. And then there's the don't have a clue athlete. I only focused on training, have not given any thought to proper nutrition strategy for the day. And interestingly enough, when I stand at expos at a lot of these major events, I often really get to spend a lot of time with people coming to the stand and saying, please help me, I'm doing Comrades, I don't know what to do from a nutrition perspective. And then I say to them, what have you done during training? And they say to me, I don't know, or not much, or I've only done fasted training, or I had some sweets on one run and some Coke and this, and they all of a sudden don't know what to do for race day. You've got to understand one thing, that a sports nutrition strategy, a race plan, when it comes to not the training part, but also the eating, the fueling, the hydration part, it really does need to be practiced during training as much as possible so that you can prepare yourself for the day, because you can't have any surprises on race day. There's not, from this weekend, we're looking at 4 weeks out to Comrades. There are still, there's not going to be very long runs, but there are going to be sort of middle distance to longer runs, maybe this weekend. And then after that, there's definitely a really serious taper downwards. So you still have got time to trial, even if you're doing 90-minute sessions, up to 2-hour sessions, you still got the ability to try and test nutrition and see if there's anything that you like or dislike, and just get a feel for what works for you and what doesn't. Obviously, it's preferable to try and prepare yourself many, many months in advance. But if you fail to do that, then you really have to start thinking about how you're going to approach your nutrition for the day. And I'm hoping that I'll be able to address a lot of that. Okay. When it comes to the importance of sports nutrition, I think it's important to understand why it takes time to build a proper nutrition plan and trial it and test it, is because you've got to experience the convenience of carry. In other words, when you're running, how convenient is it to carry this fueling strategy that you've put in place? How convenient is it to carry? Have you got seconds en route? Have you got an access point to somebody has got tables that you've got access to? Are you going to rely with just on what's route, with what's en route? And these are things that you need to take into account. I've got a question today from an athlete saying, I worked out I've got to take 3 gels an hour. I'm planning on running Comrades in in 12 hours or just under 12 hours, and that's going to equate to 36 gels. How do you carry 36 gels with you? Very, very important question. Taste and texture. Do you have that ability to tolerate and enjoy the taste of what you're consuming and obviously the texture of what you're consuming? Because that's also very important. You can't go and consume something that's going to make you feel unpleasant, make you feel ill, or you're not going to want to consume it because obviously the taste and texture is not something that you enjoy. And that's something that you also need to trial and to practice. Sometimes things taste good in the beginning, but after many, many hours in the heat, your palate becomes highly sensitized and they don't taste so great later on. And what's sweet in the beginning can be way, way sweeter later on. And sometimes you don't feel like sweet, you feel like savory, or you feel like different flavors. So these are things that you need to take into account. And then finally, which is probably one of the most important, is gut adaptation. So every time you consume something during training, you're actually adapting and you're teaching your gut, your digestive system, how to cope with what you're consuming during exercise. So just like you train your muscles, you have to train your gut. And gut adaptation isn't something that happens over a week or 2 or 3. It's something that can happen over many, many weeks and months. So you need to understand that as well. Okay. Just simply from a more physiological point of view, when we're looking at the human body, there's 2 major fuel tanks. The one is our glycogen fuel tank, and sits around 2,000 calories. Glycogen is stored primarily in muscle, and it is also stored in the liver. That's liver glycogen. And then the combination of this 2 provide you about 2,000 calories worth of fuel. That's what we call rocket fuel. That's the fuel that when you're really putting the gas down and you're working hard, that's the kind of fuel that you're going to be utilizing. When you're running at a much slower pace, which is obviously Comrades pace, you're not going to chew this up as quickly. But absolutely, if you outpace yourself or you put yourself into a different zone, and with heat changes and with heart rate elevation, you can actually end up chewing this tank. And when people say, I feel like I've hit the wall and I've got no more energy, and they're sitting on the side of the road and they just want to take a bus back to the finish of Comrades, that's what happens sometimes when that glycogen tank is depleted. The fat tank contains about 40,000 calories. You could run you could probably run 55 consecutive marathons. So you could run maybe 25 Comrades marathons just with your fat fuel tank. So you've got enough fat fuel to support you for that distance, but it is utilized under very specific conditions, and it's very difficult to maintain those conditions, especially in an ultra where this temperature changes. In the beginning, it's easier because it's cooler. You can keep the heart rate low. You can pace yourself quite well. But as temperatures change, as there's also more technical aspects of the course, such as climbing and sort of high effort needs, what's going to happen is you're going to take yourself out of that fat burn zone and you're going to start to burn glycogen as well. And so when you're going through a race, you're actually burning into both fuel tanks. I just wanted to put this into perspective so you understand how these fuel tanks are utilized. Zone 1 is what we call recovery zone, very easy, 50-60% of maximum heart rate. If you can run Comrades in that zone and run at a decent pace, well, that's great, but you won't be able to stay there. Very, very doubtful. Zone 2 is what we call the aerobic zone, 60-70% of your maximum heart rate. The idea is to try and maximize that zone as much as possible. Obviously, you will move into zone 3, which is what we call the glycolytic zone. Zone 3 does burn off, as you can see, a large portion of carbohydrates. So you want to try and maintain a zone 2 effort as much as possible. And then obviously you want to try and stay out of zone 4 and 5 because those are really glycogen depleting zones. Those are the zones that you'll find that the elite athletes are actually pushing into quite a little, well, not zone 5, but definitely into zone 4, pushing quite a bit into there, especially as they head towards the finish, where there's very, very big efforts that come into play. But early on, they're actually pacing themselves very well. And very often you find that they come from the back of the field and they run through. Okay. If you want to understand this, if you're not monitoring your heart rate data if you're having a look from a sort of a feel perspective, from perceived effort, Zone 1 is very conversational. You can talk the whole way. Zone 2 is mildly conversational. You can speak a sentence of maybe 7, 8, or 9 words, and then you need to breathe. Zone 3, maybe you can say a 3 or 4 word sentence, and then basically that would you would need to breathe. Zone 4, 1 word. Zone 5, you definitely cannot speak. Okay. So that's just on that part. All right, let's carry on. Right. Which zones are you going to be sitting in when it comes to Comrades race? You want to try and stay in this comfort zone. You want to try and stay in this comfort zone. That's the green zone. You want to try and stay in there as long as you possibly can. And if that means that you need to take a walk to lower your heart rate and to try and get back down to that zone, I would ultimately advocate that. So think about your pacing strategy for Comrades. If you overexert yourself, and I call this the primary zone, zone 3 and 4, because in this zone, a lot of people move into the zone, and this is where they sit for most of the time. This is definitely a glycogen burning zone. You don't want to tap into that. You especially don't want to tap into zone 4. You want to try and stick into maybe upper zone 2, maybe a little bit into zone 3, but you want to try and get out of there as much as possible, because as the temperatures climb, as the day gets longer, what's going to happen is that your heart rate's going to naturally elevate due to fluid loss, due to heat. And when that does happen, you're going to automatically be drifting into those zones, and you are going to be chewing off more glycogen. So it's not possible to really run Comrades in a fixed zone. You are going to get cardiac drift, and you're definitely going to start to elevate heart rate over time, and you're going to move into these other zones. So when you're looking at the kind of fueling strategy that you need to put into place, you need to look at the fueling strategy you would use for what I call the primary zone. And the reason being is that you can't really rely on pacing. You don't know what's going to happen on the day. You've got your pacing in place, but you just don't know what's going to happen on the day from a heart rate or cardiovascular drift point of view. And you definitely are going to move into this, what I call the primary zone. And even if it's zone 3 and you manage to maintain it, which is fantastic for most of the time, it's still a glycogen burning zone. And over many hours, you can end up depleting your glycogen stores. Okay, so you need to take that into account. So zone 3, this primary zone, this is where we're really going to focus on the fueling strategy. Zone 5 is the death trap. That's when you do VO2 max sessions. That's when you're doing track work, speed work, hill repeats, whatever it is. You do not want to go into that zone. If you move into that zone, you better stay back and start walking or really get that heart rate down, because once you get into that zone, you're in big trouble. Okay, that's where you're going to actually burn the candle at a rapid rate, and it's going to leave you with absolutely nothing in the tank. So just be very careful. So there we're talking about pacing. And what I say to most Comrades runners from an energy system perspective, if you feel good, stay feeling good. After 2 hours of running, if you're feeling really good and you feel like you want to up the pace, don't up the pace. Stay feeling good. Always hold back, hold back, hold back, hold back. Because most of you know, especially those of you that have done Comrades many times before, the race really starts at like Fields Hill at the bottom. You've got like you got 20 Ks to go, and that's where the real going gets tough. And you need as much energy in that tank as possible for those last 20 kilometers. That's really probably the hardest part of where that race is. So just keep that in mind, please. Okay. This is just an infographic I put together. So it just shows you how the fuel tanks are utilized. As you go into high zones, you move more anaerobic. You need a much higher carbohydrate intake. But if you can sit there in sort of those middle zones or whatever, you'll find that there's a little bit more even spread, burning fat and glycogen. So your fueling strategy can be slightly different. And you won't have to rely only on carbohydrates to, save you if you're managing to maintain a very nice controlled pace. You'll be able to have a really nominal to high amount of carbs, and you'll be able to cope quite nicely, and your digestive system will cope quite nicely. So you don't need to overdo it, but you definitely shouldn't be underdoing it either. Okay. I'm going to go into some practical fueling strategies. All right, let's talk about the basics of sports nutrition fueling. It, in short, is what I call a numbers game. It's a numbers game. Okay, if you are doing under 2 hours of exercise, you can get away with around 30 grams of carbohydrates per an hour. You can even get away with a faster training session if it's aerobic or even a mouth rinse. Okay. If you're going to go over 2 hours, up to 3 hours, or even longer, you need to look at a minimum of 60 grams to 90 grams of carbohydrates per an hour. Okay. If you've never done 90 grams per an hour, then you need to aim for the amount that you are most comfortable with, but you would want that to be at least 60 grams of carbs or over. I sometimes tell people to aim for maybe 0.8 to 1 gram of carbohydrate per kilogram of body weight. And if you can get that, that would be fantastic. But ultimately, looking at that 60 to 90 grams. So that's why it's a numbers game. I don't care what you consume in the form of carbohydrates, and we'll talk about that now. You need to understand what the volume of carbohydrate intake is on an hourly basis during Comrades. So if you're going to go 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 hours of Comrades, you need to make sure that you're consistently taking in that 60 to 90 grams of carbohydrates per an hour. You break it down into 30-minute feeds. So 30-gram carbohydrate at 30 minutes, 30 grams, 60 minutes, 30 gram, 90 minutes, 30 gram, 120 minutes. 30 gram, 2.5 hours, 30 gram, and that's how you break down a 60 gram carbohydrate feed. What does that 60 gram split into two 30 gram feeds look like? It can look like gels, it can look like chews, it can look like drinks, it can look like bananas, it can look like potatoes, but you need to understand the volume. That's where the problem comes in when people do natural food fueling, because if you do rely on potatoes and bananas, do you have the ability to look at a potato and banana and say, oh, that banana is 20 grams of carbohydrate, that potato is 20 grams of carbs, or that one's 10, that one's 15. I'm going to have 2 potatoes, 2 bananas. So sometimes you might overdo it, but very often you'll probably underdo it because they're natural foods. They've obviously got natural fiber, they're filled with a bit of fluid. And so when you do eat these things, it's very possible that you'll underfuel because you don't realize that maybe you need to be taking in 2 bananas, 2 full bananas, in order to get 32, 33 grams of carbohydrates in the hour, depending on the size of those bananas. Maybe you need to be taking in 4 or 5 boiled potatoes. But when you're running, you're not going to do that because it's like you'll pick here or there. And that's where underfueling sometimes takes place. So the advantage of utilizing a sports nutrition strategy, which is reliant on supplements, is that you will get an accurate measure of what you're going to consume on an hourly basis. If you know that a gel's got 20 grams of carbs or 25 grams of carbs, you know if you want to get to 60 grams of carbs per an hour and it's a 20 gram gel, you take 1 at 20 minutes, 1 at 40 minutes, 1 at 60 minutes. That's 3 times 20 grams. It will give you your 60 grams, and that's exactly how you would work it. If the gel's got 75 grams in, you could split it. You could say, I'll finish the gel over a 75-minute period. I'll have a third every 25 minutes or so. And that would also allow you to achieve that 60 grams of carbohydrates per an hour. Okay. So it's very important. The first thing you've got to understand is how many grams of carbs am I going to consume per an hour? The next thing we look at is what is that going to consist of? Okay, in that hourly breakdown. I'll go back to that chart. Okay, sorry, just have a sip here. All right. Now we want to calculate what is this breakdown from a product perspective. So if you have a look here, I've just put here a multi-hour system or drip fueling. We're looking at the 240 to 300 calories. We're basically looking at 240 calories is 60 grams of carbs per hour, because 1 gram of carbohydrate is 4 calories, and 300 calories will obviously take you up to a lot higher. That will be closer to 75 grams of carbs per hour, because that would be 300 calories. Okay. Right. What is my fuel dispenser? My fuel dispenser is anything that is going to provide me fuel. Am I carrying a water bottle? Am I carrying a flask? Am I carrying a gel? Am I carrying chews? Am I carrying bananas? Am I carrying potatoes? Whatever I've got that's that's dispensing my fuel? What are my options available to me? And that's what I call the fuel dispenser. The next thing is you've got to try and segment those different fuel sources and say, all right, what am I going to break this down into? And this is why I always say to people, don't overcomplicate your fueling strategy. Keep it as simple as possible. Stick to 1, 2, maximum 3, like maybe variations of product. Maybe you want to chew, maybe you prefer liquid feed, maybe you prefer solid feed, maybe like a combination feed that's like a chew texture, which is like a jelly, which is soft. Maybe you like all three, but you need to decide from a taste texture point of view what is conducive to your enjoyment, and then you've got to decide how am I going to break this down. Okay, on the next slide, I've actually put up a 32 GI multi-hour drip fueling, and this is from a product perspective. So let me show you how this works. We're going to look at the 60 to 90 gram column only because 30 grams is not something I would advocate for Comrades. It's way, way too small from a fueling perspective. Okay, if we have a look at the column, let's look at the 60 gram column. If I look at a Race Pro Energy bar, which is a nougat bar, I would have to have one nougat bar every 25 minutes to achieve 60 grams of carbs per an hour. If it was a Race Pro gel, I would have to have a half a gel every 38 minutes, or I could have a third of a gel every 25 minutes. A snap gel, which is a normal snap gel or a normal standard gel, one gel every 22 minutes. That's because it's 22, 21 grams of carbs. Sports chew, one entire bar, not a block, not 2 blocks, 4 blocks every 30 minutes would give me around 60 grams of carbs per hour. So actually give me 64 grams of carbs per hour because they're 32 gram bars. And Endure drink, 1 scoop every 22 minutes. Chewable tabs, 3 tablets every 15 minutes. I know people who say, I like to chew these tabs. Those tablets have got no energy in. They're very small. They're there to help in addition with other tablets. But if you're reliant on them as your fuel source, you need to consume 3 tablets every 15 minutes. Race Pro drink, 1.5 scoops every 25 minutes, and the Race drink, 1.5 scoops every 34 minutes. So it just shows you that if you really want to try and figure out what your minimum intake is, you now need to take the product that you're utilizing. You just look at the label on the back. It will tell you how many carbohydrates there are, or carbs and proteins. Both can be utilized as a fuel source and broken down, even protein. We'll talk about that. But you need to understand how many grams of available energy is in that particular product, and can I break that down and consume that amount to achieve 60 grams of carbs per hour. Now I'm going to go back to this chart. This is what I call the tipping point method, and this is something that I developed a long time ago because, like I said, with any fueling strategy, you need to enjoy taste, you need to enjoy texture, but you also absolutely need to make sure that it's gastrointestinal comfort. In other words, you're not getting cramps from it, you're not getting discomfort, you're not getting bloatedness, it's working for you. The only way you can do this, you can try and test this fueling strategy. So let's say you decide, I'm going to use these snap gels, I'm going to take 3 an hour, and what you do is you go and you take 3 gels and you get to 63, 64 grams of carbs per hour, and it works very well for you. Let's say you decide now I want to go to 70 grams per hour. So you take more than 3 gels. But now when you do that, suddenly you feel a bit of discomfort in the stomach. It worked with 3, but it doesn't work with 4. Now what do? You've got to go back to where you were last comfortable. You've got to keep training the gut, and then you can start to push up. The other thing that does count, and it's very important that you need to take into account here, is that different products have different functionalities, different absorption rates. Not all products are the same. So if you're taking a product that's not working for you, is it because you're fructose intolerant? Is it because you are not able to process the amount of glucose or the amount of fructose in that product? Do you need a different ratio? Do you need a little bit of protein in there? What kind of composition of product would work well for you? And that's why different products need to be trialed or tested, or different kinds of products within ranges, in order to be able to make sure that whatever you're taking is going to aid your ability to take on the most amount of energy you can on an hourly basis without causing gastrointestinal distress. And that's where the tipping point method comes in. So you keep trialing and testing, increasing. And when you hit that tipping point, you know, this is my cutoff. I can't go further. This is what I can do on an hourly basis. This is where I am. If you really wanted to try and push it a little bit further, what you would do is you would try and try a different kind of a product with a different composition to see if maybe that kind of product would allow it to go at a higher rate. And this is why I say keep your feeding strategy simple, because it's going to work like this. If you take a gel and you take a, let's say, date, and you tell me the date's got 30 grams of carbs, the gel's got whatever, 30 grams of carbs, and I'm going to use dates, natural food, as my intake, you're forgetting that the date is very high in fructose. It's also got a very high fiber portion. The gel is lower in fructose, slightly high in glucose, no fiber portion, and they're going to break down at different rates and be processed at different rates in the body. In the body, we have got two channels. We've got the fructose channel, we've got the glucose channel, and what actually happens is the one channel can be processed at a rate of around 60 grams per an hour. The other channel can be processed at around 30 grams per an hour. And the combination of them can actually allow an uptake of about 90 grams per hour. We call that 2-to-1 glucose to fructose ratio. Lately, obviously, there's also been the 1-to-0.8 glucose to fructose ratio. I do find, though, with athletes trying the 1-to-0.8 glucose to fructose ratio, is that the fructose intolerance actually does play havoc with some of them, and they're not able to tolerate that amount of intake. So you really, like I'm saying, you need to find what works for you, and that really is based on the composition of a product. Would you be more receptive to a higher glucose, low fructose product, slightly higher fructose towards the glucose, or any kind of other composition, maybe something with more stage releasing carbohydrates that break down at different rates in order to be able to support the energy system? So this is very important. And the only way I know that is to look at the label at the back, look at the ingredients, and try and understand exactly, what's going on there. Sorry, I just want if somebody's annotating there, guys, try not to annotate. I don't know why it's actually allowing it. It should have been stopped. Okay. All right. Let me go out of here. And I did see there were a number of questions popping up, which I expected while I was talking. All right, there's everything specifically product related, so I'll answer those a little bit later. Okay. All right, let's talk about energy versus hydration. Are there any questions? If there's any questions on the energy portion or understanding how you work out your carbohydrate intake on an hourly basis, then just let me know. I did see one question on the Snapchat saying once they're opened, you can't hold it back, you can't seal it, etc. Yes, you can't. You open up a gel, you take it. It's only 20 grams, 22 grams of carbs. You swallow all of that at once. Boom. There's no ways you need to hold on to that. You take it, you toss it in a trash can, and you keep on going. Okay. When it comes to energy versus hydration, I think it's very important to understand that you need to separate them out. Energy and hydration are very separate. So energy, you've got to focus on the carbohydrates that you're consuming, or carbohydrates/protein. Hydration is about fluid intake, and that's really to obviously maintain, first of all, core body temperature, to keep that body temperature nice and down, to obviously replenish the amount of fluid lost in the form of sweat, and obviously slash a little bit of minerals that's lost with it. Sweat is mainly hypertonic, so you're definitely losing more fluid than you are minerals. Okay. Hydration is calculated on temperature, conditions, and obviously individual needs. The bigger you are, the taller you are, the broader you are, the more surface area on your skin, the more you're going to sweat. The more you're going to work, the more you're going to sweat. And that's just physiology. Okay. The faster you go, the higher pace you go, the higher your heart rate, the more you're going to also sweat. So you need to think about that very carefully. The hotter it gets, the more you're going to sweat. So if you start cold, and the down run generally starts very, very cold, I mean, as you're heading down towards probably shorts, it's very cold down there. You might not sweat as much. You're also controlling your pace early on. The field's actually quite jam-packed. And once it spreads out and once the sun rises, only then do you start to realize that, okay, now with the running and with the sun coming up, there's going to be a bit more of an impact on fluid loss. So fluid is one of these things that, first of all, I say this. Number one, you can't replenish the 100% of the amount of fluid lost in the form of sweat. It's not possible. Okay, the body can only absorb so much over time. And secondly, the way to actually calculate how much fluid you've actually lost, and this should be done during training, is that, for example, if you went on a long run, you could actually calculate what your weight loss was before and after the run. In other words, you weigh yourself before the run, you weigh yourself afterwards, obviously without clothes either way, because when you come back, your clothes will have water on, which is weight. You need to weigh yourself and understand what that weight differential is. So you went for a run, maybe you weighed 70 kgs. You came back from the run, you weighed 68 kgs, and that was over 2 hours. That means you lost 2 kilograms, which equates to 2 liters of fluid. Okay. 2 liters of fluid means that in order to replenish, and we're looking at around 80% replenishment, you're talking at about it will be 1,600 1.6 liters of fluid intake. And if you went for 3 hours, you could divide that by 3, and that would, you could say that could be split at around maybe 400 mils in the first hour, and then maybe another 650 to 700 mils in the second and third hour. Okay, so that's just a way of how you could look at that. Should you be consuming water on its own? And the answer to that is absolutely not. You need to be consuming water with minerals and with carbohydrates, because if you want to maximize fluid absorption, you need sodium and you need carbs. You need a hypotonic solution, and that is the best way to hydrate. Okay, not a hypertonic solution. It's a very concentrated solution, and you definitely do need carbohydrates. So, and it's a small amount of carbohydrate fluid. So I don't advocate drinking water on its own. If you take in the water, well, you would anyway. If you were taking a gel, you take the water straight after you've had the gel. The two would work together to try and help maximize absorption. If you're taking salt tablets, or if you're taking a cramping salt gel, or whatever you're doing, you can obviously take in fluid with that to try and maximize fluid absorption. But drinking water on its own is not going to have a very good impact from a fluid absorption point of view. And because this race is very, very long, you are going to need to increase your sodium intake and your fluid intake over time. And that needs to be measured. So let's say you are going with 60 grams of carbohydrates per hour. How much sodium is in the gels that you're taking? So if you're looking at a 32 GI snap gel, you could be consuming maybe 400 milligrams of sodium if you're taking 3 gels per hour, but maybe you need 800 milligrams of sodium in the hour. So you're going to have to add on maybe another 2 cramping salt gels onto that, or maybe some salt tablets onto that, in order to be able to boost and increase that sodium intake to maximize that fluid absorption, because there definitely does need to be balance within the body in order to maximize that absorption and to maintain proper hydration. Failure to do so means that you're going to consume fluid. The fluid's just going to build up in your stomach. You're going to feel what I call the washing machine effect. You're going to run, you're going to feel that you're bloated, and you're going to hear the sloshing sound and feel it around in your stomach. At that stage, you have to stop drinking, take on carbohydrates, you take on salt, you wait for that fluid to clear out your stomach. And once that fluid has cleared, you can restart drinking again. But remember what I said, go rather with a hypertonic solution. And at worst case, you can go with isotonic, but hypertonic has got a much better absorption rate than an isotonic solution when it comes to hydration. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Can protein be used as a fuel source? Absolutely, it can be. The human body has got the ability to break down around 9 to 12 grams of protein per an hour in the digestive process, and to be able to utilize that as a fuel substrate. If you look at some of the gels in our range, for example, the Race Pro gel's got a small portion of protein in, around 7 grams, and that easily gets broken down and converted into glucose for use as a fuel. So there's no problem adding in protein. I think in ultra distance races, protein is actually so important, because it does help satiate hunger, stabilize blood sugar. It just allows you to feel a lot better, a lot more stable when you're adding it into the mix. And I think with just pure carbohydrates, it's very difficult. It's often why people feel a little bit better when they go and they have these little, I don't know, turkey sandwiches and peanut butter sandwiches and whatever it is. It's some routes, some markers en route. They've got family waiting, giving them stuff. We've been utilizing fuel zones for many years for even elite athletes, where we used to dish out our Recover. The Recover is a protein carbohydrate blend, and the athletes, even the elite athletes, they absolutely loved it. So it's really, really good. At Comrades this year, we will, and I will talk about where 32GR is going to have tables on Comrades routes and exactly what we're going to do in order to be able to support the athletes, and hopefully it will make a difference in your experience this year. Okay. All right. So just remember, when it comes to rules of engagement, please never arrive at a race without a nutrition strategy. It needs to be planned, tested. Right now, after the session tonight, think about tomorrow and the next day. Go and put a little plan together. You really should be putting something together to plan your strategy. I've seen how intricate some of these plans are with athletes. I mean, I've got, I wonder if Sean Micklejohn, if he was out, but actually, Sean's got the most amazing, I think he's got like 20 something seconders en route, and every 30 minutes or so, or he knows how long it's going to take him to get there. But every couple of kilometers, he's got somebody waiting with a product every single bit of the way on Comrades route. And somebody that's got 32 silver medals, well, you must understand that this is the degree that he actually goes to in order to be able to make sure that he can achieve what he needs to. Okay. Always take note of your energy levels. Obviously, if you're doing long runs and you're feeling fatigued and flat at the end and dizzy and nauseous or whatever, you've got a problem with your nutrition strategy, and you need to relook at it. You need to try and finish a run feeling strong. If you finish a run feeling strong, feeling stable, feeling comfortable, then you absolutely know that your nutrition strategy is really working for you, and you can bet it and you can take it to race day. Okay. All right, let me just have a look at some of the questions that are in the chat before I move on to those questions. So there are going to be gels. Okay, so let me tell you what's available on Comrades course. I think that's actually very, very important. Let me go and just have a look here. Okay. At 30 kilometers, 40 kilometers, and 70 kilometers, there are snap gel zones. Okay, there will be thousands of gels at the 30, 40, and 70 kilometer zones on Comrades route. All right. At the 50 kilometer mark, which is around the pot and kettle, for those of you that know the route quite well, we have our Recover fueling zone. We will be handing out pre-mixed ice cold Recover on the route. Okay. And those will be sachets to make it much more easy for you. They won't be put into cups. They will be sachets so you can grab it and go. And they will be chilled. And we're going to have a lot of staff there at that 50 kilometer zone handing out those Recover sachets. Okay. At the 63 kilometer mark, that's by the old main road. For those of you who know there from like that, the Winston Park, the Caltex there in the corner, that zone is the anti-cramp zone. We're going to be handing out the cramp assault gels at that zone. So that's the reason we're doing that, is because we know that a lot of people, as they head towards fields and go down Fields Hill, the legs become a little bit more susceptible to cramping, and we're hoping that this will help them at least en route. I would say that if you can take and carry cramp assault gels with you, prevention is always better than cure, but we will be handing them out at the 63 kilometer mark on zone. Nougat bars, from what I understand, the Comrades has decided that those are going to go into the goodie bag. So there'll be Nougat energy bars in the goodie bags. They won't be en route, just so you're aware of that. All right. When it comes to, okay, yes, somebody mentioned Race Pro Gel has a lid. Yes, so Race Pro Gel is a large gel. It's equivalent to nearly 4 snap gels. And that has a lid and it's resealable. You can flick it, you can close it, and it's quite easy to sip on it en route. It's a very, very nice product to utilize as a Comrades fueling product. I am going to put up a bit of a chart, which I will share with you, a little bit of a fueling chart. You could have not said it better. Can I demonstrate? Okay. maybe I should pull up that chart now. Let me share my screen with something different. I will show you now. I remember pulling it up into a PDF. And I'll tell you what, I will even send out, I'm going to send out, no, not here. Let me see where he sent this to me. Give me 1 sec, guys. Sorry about this. There we go. I am going to post this in the chat. This is an access to a Google Drive that we've put together. And in this Google Drive is a Comrades fueling guide, but I'm going to put it up on my screen so that you have the ability to see it. Okay. It's an ultramarathon fueling guide. You'll see here. There's some nice little tips in there. It talks about what I've spoken about as well. Perception versus reality in ultras, a little bit of from experience there. And the fuel tank, choosing your preferred fuel. There we worked on 50 and 90. I would say if you can get 60, that's better. Okay, so let's first have a look how this is broken down. The first thing, oh, sorry, man, I'm not sharing my screen. That is terrible. I apologize for that. Let me just pull up that PDF and share it. That's terrible. Apologies. Let me go back. Okay, so for those of you that are seeing it now for the first time, just over there, there's an ultramarathon fueling guide, and then I've put some tips and tricks and talk about ultras, and then also a little bit about, choosing your preferred fuel, everything I've spoken about. Okay, so if we go through this, you'll see there I've put there pre-race meal. So you should try and consume a pre-race meal around. Sorry, guys, let me just mute that. Please all try to keep your mics muted if you can. For all the other participants. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Okay, so the most important thing to understand is you need to have a pre-race meal around 2 to 2.5 hours before the race starts. You can have it even earlier, but I'd say minimum 2 to 2.5 hours before the race starts. It needs to be a high carbohydrate, nominal protein, low fiber, low fat. We obviously advocate the 32 GI pre-race meal. It works very, very well. But if you've got access to oats, that's fine. If you've got access to white bread, not brown bread or rye bread, white bread, that's fine. You can throw some Nutella on, you can throw some honey on, some banana on. People say to me, what about eggs? Don't eat a lot of eggs. Eggs are protein and fat. It's not going to really set you up from fuel. You got to get the carbs in, mostly carbohydrates with a little bit of protein. So you don't need that. You can have like 4 or 5 slices of white bread if you want, and a little bit of scrambled egg white. I mean, that's something that would work quite well. I would do pre-race hydration.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, if you can try to keep your mics muted. I just want to do this again. Someone else is coming here now.
No, it looks, yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. Can you still see the PDF? Just let me know, because I think I just let me know if you can see this PDF here.
Yeah, it's on the screen.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. All right, so the idea is to also hydrate properly before the race. You can mineral load a few days before. I'm a big advocate of it. Drink a couple of bottles of hydrate, 2 to 3 bottles a day, 3 days leading into the event. Top up those sodium stores, those mineral stores, maximize your hydration levels, and really set yourself up properly for race day. Do not drink alcohol, please. I am going to be doing another webinar in 2 weeks. We'll be talking about, and I'm doing one, I think, the week after next, which will be more the week leading into the event and how to prepare for that week leading into the event, what to be focused on. But for now, we're talking more about fueling strategies. On race day, taking some hydrates a little bit before the start. So you can have some coffee if you want, if you like caffeine or just caffeine a couple of hours before. And then you can actually carry on topping up and just hydrating. Obviously, don't overhydrate. Don't take in too much fluid before the event. Otherwise, you're going to be running to run up and down to the portaloos, and it's not the most convenient. You want to get into your pen, you want to stay there, and you want to wait for the start. I mean, obviously, you don't want to overload your bladder. Okay. From a pre-race performance point of view, I've mentioned caffeine. Obviously, caffeine is an aid, but you need to have tried it and tested it. So it works for a lot of people, but for some people, they are intolerant, and it can cause issues. Waiting for the start. Obviously, having a proper pre-race meal will set you up. Never skip it. But you can also top up on a little bit of energy prior to the race. You can actually sit and nibble on a banana or an energy drink if you want. And I would say probably around 10, 15 minutes before the start, I'd actually start to now take in a gel. I would probably sip on a Race Pro gel or an energy drink or something. You need to start getting it in. Why? Because once the race starts, you're not going to be focused on fueling. You're going to be focused on finding a level of comfort and trying to just get into a pace and regulate your breathing and just trying to get rid of those nerves. You know, once the gun starts, you just want to just start running and you want to find that level of comfort. So the best is to try and make sure that you set your energy system up quite nicely before the race. Okay. I'll talk a bit about that. I've broken it down also here. You'll see start to 15 kilometers. I've spoken about hydration and energy. So taking on energy every 30 minutes. Hydration, the temperatures are low in the beginning, but obviously taking a little bit. I've broken it into 15 to 30, 30 to 45. So you can go in and you can read this in the link. Some of the strategies that I've put together for Comrades Marathon, and I've just put here, so people that want to do sub 9 hour or sub 12 hour, etc. And this is based on 50 grams of carbs per hour. You'll see there, I've said pre-race, you can 2 to 2.5 hours before, you can have you can have some pre-race meal, you can add a teaspoon of honey, teaspoon of peanut butter, half a banana. You can sip a little bit of hydrate, you can take a G-shot if you want before the start. And then this is a combination feed. So here, I've put a chew feed, which is a combination. It's chews with sports gel, so you can actually see 2 chew blocks and 1 sports gel in the first 15 kilometers, and you'll see how I've broken this down by mileage. Now, you'll notice that I've actually put their start to 15, 15 to 30. You've got to really think about fueling, not in a distance marker point of view, because if you do that, if I'm running at 4.5 minutes a K or 5 minutes a K, just using it as an example, and I'm going to run and feed every 6 kilometers. To feed every 6 kilometers, which would be 30 minutes for me or less, then I know that I'm running 4.5 to 5 minutes a K. I'm going to get there 26, 27, 30 minutes. But if you're running at 6 or 7 minutes a kilometer, you're going to get there at 35 maybe minutes, or if you're running even at 8 minutes a K, you're going to go even slower. You're going to be putting yourself into a much, much longer feed. So when it comes to fueling, try and clock feed. Don't focus on distance markers. Try and work out from a time perspective, what time are you going to get to a particular part of the route? Is it going to be 45 minutes or is it going to be 30 minutes? And you want to try and hit those 30-minute feeds. Those are optimal. 45-minute feeds, 40-minute feeds, they're just too far apart, and you're going to hit these peaks and troughs, and you're going to find that you're going to hit an energy dip. You need to keep the feeding very frequent. And the more frequent you feed it, the more stable you're going to be. The less peaks and troughs they're going to be en route. Okay. A liquid feed, I only put gels, just as an example. And then I put here another option here, which is Race Pro bars. So it's also combination feed with gels. So there's the Nougat bars with the gels, a combination feed. And then also only a Race Pro gel kind of a feed. And I'll put that there. So you can utilize those as a strategy. And then I think the last one was a combination feed with protein. So just Race Pro bars and then with the Race Pro gels. But that's for people that are going gold to silver, or it said plus minus 8 hours or under, basically. We've catered for 8 hours or under. So I think this guide will provide you a basis, but it's not cast in stone because there are a lot of ways you can fuel. I'm just trying to keep it as simple as possible. One thing that somebody did ask me is like, let's say I don't want to eat a bar. let's say I do pass a table of bananas and potatoes. I've been taking the gel at 30 minutes. 30 minutes later, I get to a table and there's bananas there, and I actually feel like a banana. So have the banana. It will replace the feed of, let's say, the bar or the next gel feed. Have the banana, and then 30 minutes later, maybe you can go back to the gel or have another banana and then go back to the gel or back to the bar. You can alternate those feeds, but just don't create havoc and make a soup where you're mixing too many things together, because that is going to be problematic. Okay. So download this guide, guys. I think it's very useful. And if there's any questions, you're welcome to contact us. I've put in there also beneficial add-ons, so Cramposol, G-shots, how those can actually help. Just by the way, Cramposol is not an energy gel. It is a hydration gel. A lot of people say, I don't want to run with a hydrate and fizzy and have to mix it in water. I agree 100%. If you've got a second en route mixing your hydrate for you, great. But if you don't have the ability to mix a hydration product en route, then you can run with a Cramposol, which is also a hydration product. You just take the water separately. And once you add water and you take that, it's exactly the same thing. This is a sodium gel. It's an electrolyte gel with a little bit of carbs. It's not there to supply you energy. It's there to maximize fluid absorption. Why it works so well is because it really does maximize fluid absorption, and it's preventative in cramping, and obviously preventative from a dehydration perspective. How many of these could you take? I've raced and I've taken 3 an hour even. I've taken like 1 every 20 minutes. It depends how hot it is. Usually I would say take at least 1 every 45 minutes to an hour at least. But if it's going to be very, very hot, you can increase it. You can go 2 in an hour, 3 in an hour. It really just depends on what your requirements are going to be on the day. So don't limit yourself. And they're very small and very convenient and easy to carry. Okay. And then I've also spoken about the protein intake as well. All right. So hopefully that link works, and that will provide you a nice little breakdown as to how to approach your nutrition on the day. All right, let me just pull up here some more questions. Just going to see if there were more questions there. Okay. Are we going to have seconding tables? Okay, so the thing is that you need to differentiate between us and the actual club, the 32 GI running club, because they're different entities. Obviously as the official nutrition partners of Comrades Marathon for 2025, we have got dedicated tables en route to cater for the athletes. Those aren't seconding tables. Those tables are where the gels are, where I mentioned, the tables where the recover sachets are, which I've mentioned, and the Cramposol. Those are for the entire field, and anybody can utilize those tables en route if they want to. Okay. When it comes to seconding tables, the 32 GI Running Club, which is managed by an independent entity, they have I think 4 tables en route where they are going to provide seconding. They will have product en route. I think there you have to pay a nominal fee because they've got to hire people to manage the tables, and there are expenses involved. I don't think it's expensive, though. It's actually pretty cheap, and you can get hold of them in order to take this up. Okay. If you are interested in utilizing the 32 GI Running Club seconding tables, please, I'll actually put up this over here. Just email coach@32gi.com or even info@32gi.com, and we will forward your details to the relevant people, and we will give you their details as well so that you can contact them directly and arrange that, because we're not involved with that. Okay, we provide them product for the tables, but it's something that they do on their own accord. All right, let's go through some Q&A questions. So somebody said, if you use gels and using Endure as a carb top-up and hydration, then when would you use Cramposol? Cramposol, it's not energy. The others provide energy. Cramposol, you'd still take every hour. As a prevention, if it really is hot, I would increase the amount of Cramposol that I'm taking to maybe 2 an hour. Okay. Oh, sorry. You want me to put up the link again? I can put it up there. There we go. If you want that link to the fueling guide. Okay. All right. There we go. All right. Let's go through some of the questions here because maybe some of them will, basically be relevant to you. Somebody wrote here, how do I fuel for possible mild GI bleeding issues, avoid foods, etc. to recommend? So first of all, I don't know what the condition is here. I would suspect it's probably along the lines of proctitis, which is irritable bowel syndrome, which can create bleeding. And to be quite honest, I mean, that really comes down to dietary intervention, not really a fueling intervention. And if you are bleeding or have GI bleeding issues, you really do need to see a gastroenterologist, to be quite honest, and have it dealt with. I wouldn't be able to specifically recommend anything because I don't really understand the condition, and I would definitely avoid stimulants like caffeine because that can definitely irritate the gut quite a bit. Very often these are brought on by nerves, etc., and so that could be a trigger. But as far as how to manage that goes, definitely daily diet, lifestyle choices, that's going to be very, very important. Refresh on the amount of carb intake for an hour, 60. This guy says 945 comrades. I would even hit to 70 or 80 if I can, even 90. There's a lot of talk at the moment that fitness, health, and nutrition strategy should not be the same for men and women due to physiological and other differences between the genders. How do you advise women approach comrades training differently to men? Very, very good question, actually. Men and women are very different. What works for men and what works for women are very different. First of all, I'll say this. Women are built more for endurance sport. Why? Because women are much more efficient at burning off fat. They're also better at pacing. And the way their bodies work is that they actually can tap into fat burn a lot more efficiently than men can. Okay. Secondly, women should never train fasted. Men can train fasted. Women should never train fasted. You need to pre-fuel your workouts, even if it's a recovery session, even if it's a strength session. You need to have some amino acids circulating if it's strength. You need to have some carbohydrates if it's endurance, or maybe a combination if it's a HIIT session, or if it's a combination of strength and endurance. And then there's no intermittent fasting with women at all. Definitely don't advocate it, especially females that are active. And so in that case, also the focus really does need to be on recovery. So protein ingestion at least within 45 minutes post-exercise, and obviously some carbohydrates to stabilize and to replenish any depletion of glycogen, or as well as maybe a drop in blood sugar. I think that's the main difference between the two genders is on the nutrition side of things. It's very important to understand. I get a lot of female athletes coming to me and saying to me, I'm battling with body composition, I'm battling this, I'm battling with that. It's because they fast. They're training faster, they're doing faster training, losing lean muscle, absolutely crazy. You want to try and engage and pick up as much lean muscle as possible. You need to eat, you need to fuel, you cannot be fasting whatsoever. Okay. I'm just going to see here quickly. Can I combine race per trail with sports choose? It's not something I would really advocate because, I mean, you could, but the one releases and is absorbed rapidly. The other one is very slowly. So I guess if you're spacing your feeds 30 minutes apart, you would have broken down and utilized the carbohydrates that you had taken in. I would not take them at the same time because they're going to clash. Okay, so I would say, if you keep them far enough apart, then that would be fine. I always experience a running stomach, even with Imodium. Please advise which product is suitable for people like me. So runner's trots is something that is very common amongst runners. I don't advocate Imodium. I really don't, because Imodium doesn't just block and stop. It prevents the absorption of carbohydrates as well. So, I mean, if you're relying on energy and now you're trying to get that energy from consuming gels or consuming any form of carbohydrate, and you've packed Imodium into your body, well, you're going to limit the amount of energy you've got. You are going to crash and burn at a later stage. I would not utilize Imodium. You need to try and fix the runner's trots. And what is that? What is causing it? Is it a food that you're sensitive to that's causing the issue? Are you having it the day before, 2 days before? What is triggering that GI distress that's causing the runner's trots? It's very important. Maybe you're lactose intolerant, you need to reduce it. Maybe fiber intolerant, you need to reduce it and eliminate it. I would start cutting the fiber first if it's stomach issues. I would really reduce the fiber 3 days out. I would start to reduce the fiber to try and allow my body to be able to process and not get irritated as much as possible. And if it does get worse with nerves, then you need to try and calm down that central nervous system of yours, because maybe it's pre-race nerves or pre-running or pre-training. Just the thought of it can actually trigger bowel movement. So that's something that you need to think about as well. These are things that should be tried and tested during training, not just on race day. These are just some ideas. You could take a natural relaxant like a Biral or rescue remedy and see if that helps calm the nerves a little bit, maybe gives you a little bit better night's sleep. But I wouldn't drink anything or eat anything that would overly aggravate the digestive system. And in that case, fiber, dairy, heavy meat, heavy fats, those kind of things can cause issues. You want easy digesting lean proteins and very, very easily digesting carbohydrates as well, so they can be broken down and utilized. Okay. I've tried gels and intervals, but I still cramp towards the end as I pick my pace. What am I doing wrong? It's not the gels, it's not the energy. It's cramping is a different ballgame altogether. Cramping can be a neuromuscular trigger. It can be something that just happens. It can be an underconditioned, undertrained body. In other words, you have not prepared yourself sufficiently for the routes and you over fatigue the muscles, and that can also trigger cramping. And very often cramping is brought on by dehydration, fluid and mineral depletion, which can also trigger it. So you've got an ability to prevent cramping by maintaining proper hydration status over time. And the other way is to obviously condition yourself. One thing that I can honestly say does help also mitigate cramps: strength work. The stronger and the more strength work you do, and the stronger you've got over time leading into the event, the more lean muscle you've got. And I'm not talking about just compound lifting, but even compound lifting and a combination of plyometrics and mixing these all up and doing these things can actually help mitigate cramping as well. So it's quite important to approach a race by taking care of all these things. Unfortunately, we're only 4 weeks away. So even if you have to start doing strength training today, it's not really going to help. So at the moment, you need to focus mainly on hydration, and then obviously take some things on route. By the way, there was a question, I'll probably get to it later, but what if you do get a cramp? Well, how do you deal with it? Well, first of all, I would try and walk it off. I wouldn't try and run through it, because I think it's just going to make it worse. I would definitely try and take on salt and take on fluid. So if you've got cramp with salts, definitely take on that, take on fluid, keep walking, keep stretching out, don't start running yet, wait for it to settle. And then after a couple of minutes, once you've taken it in, then try and see if you start running again, is it going to disappear? Sometimes it won't come back, especially if it was dehydration that triggered it, and you've taken on enough fluid, but then you need to keep maintaining that, because if you don't, it can creep back in again when there's another bout of excessive fluid loss. You can just create those cramps, can come back quite significantly again. So just keep that in mind, but don't try and just run through it, and definitely do not ice it. I see people, they get cramps. Suddenly there's an ice cold spray on the side of the road and they get somebody to spray them. That's just going to make it worse. You don't want to freeze it up. You want to actually try and keep the circulation going. And you just want to try and relax the muscle so that it doesn't land up tightening and becoming an overbearing pain. So just please keep that in mind. Yeah, the balance with hydration, overhydration. Look, overhydration, you'll know when you've overhydrated. You can feel that you've overhydrated. You've taken on too much fluid. It's not being absorbed. You've got that washing machine effect. But you want to make sure that you're taking in enough so that you're not going to get that, and that you are going to be hydrating at a very specific rate. The way to really test it is during training. Like I said, weigh yourself before and after. Look at what your fluid loss is over various conditions, and try and see if you can meet around 80% of that intake by trying to get that gain. Why do I get a runny tummy with sweet gels? I don't know. I mean, it could be a number of factors. It might not be the gel. It might also be what you're consuming with the gel. Remember, gel's concentrated. It's a hypertonic solution. And you need to take in fluid with a gel. Some gels require like 280 mils of fluid in order to be able to really allow that pull through. Some may be less, 150, maybe 200 mils. But you can't just take a gel and then run and not drink, because if you don't take in fluid with a gel, you're going to be in big trouble. You do need to take in fluid with a gel. So if you don't, you are going to get some gas buildup, and you're going to get a really incredibly uncomfortable digestive system, and that can actually lead to some diarrhea. So you just want to make sure that that doesn't happen. If you are consuming a sufficient amount of fluid with the gel and you're still getting it, then maybe the gel is just not conducive to your digestive system, and you need to try a combination of something else, maybe a different kind of gel, a different structure. And the other thing is have you trained your gut? Like, did you start off with a tipping point, start off low, build up high, and you need to actually train your stomach to adapt to these things. You can't, I hear a lot of people saying, I'm going to train low and race high. There's no such thing. You can't train low and race high, because when you're training, you need to be training sometimes like you're racing. I heard somebody said to me today, all my runs from now on are at Comrades pace. So you're training like you're going to race. Is all your nutrition for Comrades being taken in while you're running at Comrades pace? You need to be training your gut. You can't go and train fasted and then suddenly expect your body's going to adapt to carbohydrate intake on the day. It doesn't. Your digestive system speaks a language, and that language it speaks, it only learns over time. If it hasn't learned the language of carbohydrates during exercise, and you all of a sudden up it on race day, you can expect trouble. You can expect trouble. It's like walking into another country and you don't understand a word they're saying because they speak a completely different language. Your digestive system does not understand, I have had no carbs for the last 6 months, now I'm going to throw carbs in. It doesn't understand what to do with it. It needs to be trained over time. So please remember that. When is the right time to take supplements during an ultra marathon? From before the ultra marathon even starts, you start fueling, and you fuel clock feed every 20, 30 minutes, boom, 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 all the way through your clock feed. For a run as long as Comrades, what's the ideal way to incorporate solid foods into nutritional race plan? I've spoken about solid and taking in obviously supplements. You've got to find what works for you, but you're just going to make sure that if you do take in a solid food, you understand how that works. Are solids more easily are liquids more easily digestible and better absorbed than solids? I mean, not really. I mean, to a certain extent, I think it depends on what the solids are. I mean, if you're going to eat a stick of biltong, believe me, you're not going to break that down and use it as energy. That is going to sit in your stomach, and your digestive system is going to battle to break it down. Someone says to me, but biltong makes me feel better. It's not the biltong that makes you feel better. It's the salt on the biltong that makes you feel better. You're getting salt in. And salt with fluid, like I said, nice hydration, etc. But the protein, that is not going to be able to be broken down and utilized when it's such heavy meat like that. That's going to sit. So just keep that in mind. Rather go with easily digestible products. When can you start taking nutrition before the race? Like I said, 10, 15 minutes before the start. I use gels, chewable tablets, run into bananas. I get to 35, I get hungry, empty stomach feeling. It's more likely to be lack of nutrition. Absolutely. You're not taking on enough. So I don't know. Chewable tablets, like I said, 4 grams of carbs a tablet. It's not a lot. A gel, how big is the gel? And with the 2 bananas, and I mean, that doesn't sound like a lot. Actually, 35 kilometers, it depends on how long it takes you to get there. I mean, maybe it takes you 3 hours to get to 35 Ks. And if it takes you 3 hours and you've eaten 2 bananas, some chewable tabs, and I use a gel, I mean, that's probably 20, 30 grams of carbs an hour. It's not a lot at all. Okay, so you're definitely lacking quite a bit. How to calculate when to fuel for Comrades and when? Okay, so we've gone through that. Race Pro gel and bar, can I use interchangeably? Yes, you can. As a moderate to heavy sweater, I need to use sodium tabs over and above the 32 GI hydrate. Yes, I would say yes. Even if you're not a moderate to heavy sweater, I would say take it, because you're going to sweat at Comrades. It's a long day. What's the frequency of taking gels whilst running? Clock feed, 30 minutes, 20, 30 minutes. I'm currently using 32 GI products now, and I want to know along the race program for Comrades for hydration and energy. Can I use hydrate? Hydrate's not for energy. Hydrate is for hydration. You can use it, but remember, it needs to be mixed for you, or at least if you can drop a tablet in a bottle and wait for it to dissolve, then you can start to utilize it. It doesn't take long to dissolve. It takes a minute or two, but yes, you can use it from a hydration perspective if you want to run and carry a bottle. If you feel very bloated and having stomach cramps after a race, please, it can be caused by gels, absolutely. You get something called like a reverse osmosis effect. You get reverse fluid pool, you get a gel fermenting within the stomach if there's not a sufficient amount of fluid to process it. And this works on pressure. So the minute you ingest something, there needs to be a certain sort of fluidity with that substance in order to be able to allow for maximum pull through. And if that doesn't happen, then you are going to land up in trouble and you can have a gassy stomach. So yes, that can be possible, but just make sure you're taking on a sufficient amount of fluid with it. How do you treat cramps when they come? I've explained, don't run through it. With regards to sodium, what's the best way to get it in? 800 milligrams hourly, race per gels, 132 grams of sodium, correct. Every hour, 1 gel and 1 crampasol. The sodium isn't high enough. Yeah, I would take in crampasol gels with it. I would take in maybe another 2 crampasol gels in an hour, because that would give me around another 400 milligrams of sodium at least on top of that. And you could actually also have a look, a hydrate tab's 337 milligrams of, but like I said, it's not as easy. I would just increase or add in salt tablets if you can. Are there any side effects in using energy gels? There's no side effects. It's like liquid food in a way. It's just carbohydrates. The only side effects would be if you haven't trained your gut and they're not conducive to consuming them. You could land up with some distress. The Comrades nutrition plan, I've sent you that template now. Is it fine to eat spicy foods before the race? Preferably not. I would avoid it. It's not something you want. It's going to cause havoc with the gut. You need to keep everything very easy on the digestive system. When using endurance drink, is it necessary to take pure water? I don't understand what that means. I mean, you need to mix endure with water, but you don't have to consume. I wouldn't take water on its own anyway. You can take hydrate with endure, just as an example, if you wanted. After long runs, I get dizzy at the finish. Even if I have a lot of dizziness, could be low blood sugar. It could also be dehydration. It could also be, if it's accompanied with some nausea, it might even be severe dehydration. But it might be low blood sugar, very, very likely. It might not be related to hydration. It actually might be related to energy. So you need to think about that. How often should we take gels on the long run, specifically Comrades? Don't think of them as gels. Think of them as a fuel dispenser, and think of it as how many grams of carbs do you want per hour, and that will allow you to decide. Afraid to take a lot of carbs, especially during rest days or bulletin races, because scared of conditions such as diabetes. Diabetes is not caused by carbohydrate intake. Diabetes is caused by a lot of a lot of lifestyle choices over time, and to be quite honest, sometimes it's genetic. Sometimes it's brought on by other lifestyle choices. I would worry more about processed foods. I would worry about not consuming a sufficient amount of healthy foods in the diet. You also need to take into factors like alcohol. You need to take into factors like sleep. You need to take into factors like weight. You need to take into a lot of factors. A lot of factors need to be taken into account from a diabetic point of view. It's not just carbohydrates don't cause diabetes. Lifestyle choices mainly would cause diabetes, and a combination of them can definitely trigger it. I come from a family where my late father was a diabetic, and I understand it quite intimately. But again, it depends whether you're a type 1, genetically, got diabetes, or type 2. But taking gels and supporting your ability to train, you're not doing it all the time. Like I say, you periodize your carbohydrate intake. You take gels when you need to. You take carbohydrates in when you need to. But carbohydrates are there for recovery. I eat an extremely high carbohydrate diet, and I have been. I'm 54 years old nearly, and no issues with the endocrine system. So you've got to think about it. It's not the exercise and the nutrition that's worried. It's the daily choices that you've got to think of. Okay, I've spoken about how the water points will showcase the 32 GR products. When I run marathons, I take a gel every 30 minutes. Comrades will be running at a slow pace, so it should take a gel close to 40. No. Still take a jog every 30 minutes, but like I said, it depends on how many grams of carbs you want to get in per an hour at Comrades pace, and that's quite important to understand. I would try and maximize my intake early on, because later on sometimes you don't feel like taking anything. So support the energy system at least in the first half as much as you possibly can, and see if you can maintain that in the second half. If you feel with Race Pro all the way in between taking Cramposalt, will the two products work or they clash? They definitely don't clash. Cramposalt is not an energy product. Race Pro is an energy product, and they work together very, very well. We've got athletes using Cramposalt as well as Hydrate with Race Pro. And we've also had many, many athletes that have only used Race Pro as a single source fuel for the whole of Comrades, and it works very well. Where do I store my supplements? Cycling was much easier with 3 back pockets. Agreed. You've got bottle cages on a bike, and you've got 3 pockets. That's why I said convenience is quite important. So for a lot of athletes, I advise them. You can also, if you email me a coach, I can send you a link to a beautiful race belt, which I tested and tried a while ago for running, and it's absolutely amazing. I've carried in that race belt, I've carried an equivalent of 18 gels. Not even, you don't even feel it. It's so comfortable, that race belt. So I'm just saying that there are products out there which work so fantastically. You've just got to make use of them. And the other thing you could do is rely on some of the tables, or you can rely on some secondary tables or seconds en route. That's the only other way to do it. But yeah, when it comes to ultra running, it's a very different ball game when it comes to getting to being able to carry everything properly for those events. Okay, I just want to put up here, see if there's any more questions. Is it okay to take a sleeping tablet the night before Comrades? Okay, so I know many athletes over decades that have, even elite athletes, that have utilized the sleeping aids to help them sleep the night before the race. So I'm going to say this. Firstly, I do understand that it is very difficult to sleep the night before a big event. The pre-race nerves, I mean, it's tense. It happens. Some people have go-tos. They put on some music, they chill, they relax, they try and get an early night's sleep, and hopefully they pass out. But for some of us that have raced, I know you can toss and turn all night, and it's like having a toothpick on your eyes. Even if you close them, you're still stressed, and you're not really getting a good night's sleep. And it's a very tough one, because sleep can truly impact performance. When it comes to the race, I'm going to talk about this in the next webinars. I think it's very important to maximize your sleep on the Friday night, and try and sleep as much as you can Friday night into Saturday. Don't get up early in the morning. Just try and maximize it as much as possible. Saturday night, obviously, you want to try and get a good night's sleep. The best thing to do is eat also a small meal the night before. You don't have to go massive and eat these big carb-loading meals. It's nonsense. It's not going to impact you on race day. Such a long race, it's not going to impact you at all. You can eat a bigger meal if you want at lunchtime on the Saturday before. Saturday night, have a small meal, because if you overeat that meal, you're going to elevate your metabolism, your metabolic rate will be up, and what you're going to do is you're going to impact your sleep negatively. So these are ways that you can cope. Okay, back to the sleeping tablet. If you have tried and tested it, and you know that tablet is going to allow you to wake up feeling refreshed and fresh the next morning, then by all means, you've tried, you've tested it, and I'm okay with that. And I've seen elite athletes that have done it. I know some that take a quarter, some that take a half, and they know that, okay, it's going to last 6 hours, but I've got 8 or 9 hours to the race, and I'm going to feel okay. And that's how, how you could utilize it. But I wouldn't take it if I've never tried and tested it before, because I once had a sleeping tablet many years ago, not before a race. I just had a sleeping tablet, and it was supposed to be a natural sleeping tablet. And the physician said to me, see if this helps. I took a tablet. Man, the next morning I woke up, I was so groggy, I was so dizzy. It took me hours and hours to actually sort of wake up again. I never touched it ever again. I thought, man, this is crazy. I can't. We will figure out another way of getting a good night's sleep. So I just think that you just got to be very, very careful from that point of view. You don't want to ruin your race day. Can I take a caffeine shot every 10 kilometers? Okay, so that's a very important question. Caffeine metabolizes it at a very specific rate. It reaches peak concentration levels every 60 minutes. So it means if you are taking in caffeine, 60 minutes later, you start the downer. Okay. Do you want to feel that effect? Absolutely not. So what do you need to do? Take another caffeine shot. So every time you take caffeine, you've got to realize it's giving you an hour. If you've only got 3 caffeine shots, make sure that you're 3 hours before the finish. 4 caffeine shots, 4 hours before the finish. 5 hours before the finish. And then you can take 1 every hour. Don't let that hour pass. You take it at 55 minutes actually before the hour, so you already get the next one in. So just remember, they peak and then they start that down. So I would say just keep topping up. If you're going to take the caffeine, you're going to keep topping up. From the time you start taking it, you need to keep taking it. Otherwise, you are going to feel that down, and it's not a nice effect. You definitely don't want to feel like that. Okay, I think that is it. Are there any more questions from anybody? Let me just see here. What's the max dose of G-Shot? Look, a G-Shot's got 60 milligrams of caffeine in. When I've raced, I've taken in 1 every 30 minutes, which is 120 milligrams an hour. I haven't personally tested more than that. I know some people who take 200 milligrams an hour, but that's a lot over an 8 to 12 hour race, I would say. I took 1 every 30 minutes in a Ironman event, and that was for just under 10 hours, and that was 120 milligrams per hour. So you could actually take 1 every 30 minutes. And by the way, it doesn't impact the energy system. This is caffeine. It's got nothing to do with energy. It's for mental energy. It's to wake you up. But just make sure that you've tested it. I wouldn't go and take 2 shots of caffeine if I hadn't tried it at least once or twice to see how I feel. Okay. The water sachets along routes, I think they're the standard 200 ml, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm sure the guys from Thirsty would be able to share that information. I'll find out. Just drop me an email. I'll find out, and I can just give you an answer. And we can work that out. No problem. I think if I think about our Race Pro sachets, if I'm not mistaken, they're 200 and not the Race Pro sachets, the Recover sachets en route. I think they're going to be 280 mils. How can one track and keep all this information on race day? Write it down, read it. Go through it, memorize it, write it on your hand or your arm if you need to. Usually, a lot of the runners they definitely run with especially those that are second. They run with very specific seconding reminders en route. You can also set if you've got a Garmin, you can actually set feeding zones and alarms in there to remind you to feed every 30 minutes or every 20 minutes, etc. The address of the questions is actually here in the presentation. If you can see it, yeah, right in front of you, coach@32gr.com. Can you see the screen here? This one over here. So I'll just pop the email into, you can send it there or coach@32gr.com. Either or. Yes, you can take a caffeine shot every hour for 12 hours. It's not gonna affect you at all. It probably, if you love the caffeine, it will make you feel a lot better. I took, like I said, in just under 10 hours, I took 20. I took 20 caffeine shots in 9 hours and 50 minutes. So you can do it. I've done it, and it does feel good for those of us that like to race on caffeine. Okay. All right, so I'm going to end the presentation there. Once the presentation is downloaded, our marketing manager is going to put it onto the 32GR YouTube channel. It won't be sent tonight. It won't be uploaded tonight, unfortunately. It will only be done, I think, tomorrow, because he has to check the recording and make sure that everything's okay. And once it's done, it will be uploaded. By the way, there are other presentations that I have done previously on the YouTube channel, so you can always go back and look. Some are similar to this. I don't think we've got a specific Comrades guide in there, but I've given you the link to the Comrades guide, and we also posted in the YouTube channel so that people can also download it from there as well. If there are any questions that you think of, you can try and email us. Otherwise, I will definitely be at Comrades Marathon Expo. You're welcome to come and chat to me there, and hopefully I can help you finalize and sort things out before the big day. I wish you all the best over the next couple of weeks as you head towards the Big C. I know that it's the work's been done. My advice to you is just please stay healthy, really stay healthy, try and avoid crowds, eat healthy, get plenty of sleep, keep that immune system up, because it's the only thing you can do now. The training's done. It's basically done. The best thing you can do now is get to race day and get to race day healthy. You want to get onto that start line. You don't want to be sick. And so just, yeah, I wish you all the best over the next couple of weeks. Hopefully it's very smooth, and I hope to see you at Comrades Expo. Okay, so have a good evening. Have a good rest of the week, everyone, and we will chat soon.